All right, let's dive into a story. But this isn't just about corporate law or trademarks. This is a story about a single letter. A single letter in a word that sparked a legal battle all the way to the highest court and ended up completely changing how we think about patient safety. So it all comes down to this simple question: Falsigo or Falsitap? I mean, say them out loud. They sound almost identical, right? But here's the thing. They were two totally different drugs from two different companies with two very different active ingredients. And as you're about to see, that tiny difference, well, it can have some massive consequences. Because this is really the heart of the matter. Think about it. If you get two brands of soda mixed up, what's the worst that happens? You get the wrong flavor. No big deal. But when you're talking about medicine, the stakes are infinitely higher. We're not just talking about an inconvenience. We're talking about health and sometimes literally life and death. So let's get into the nitty-gritty of the specific case that dragged this whole critical issue into the spotlight and really forced the law to take a hard look at how it deals with medicine. Okay, so here are our two main players. On one side, you've got Cadila Healthcare, and they make a drug called Falsigo. On the other side, there's Cadila Pharmaceuticals with Falsitab. Just looking at this, you can already see where the problem starts. Both drugs were made to treat the exact same illness, falciparum malaria, but, and this is absolutely crucial, they used different active ingredients. To make things even more complicated, neither of these names was a registered trademark at the time, which basically set the stage for a major legal showdown. So Cadila Healthcare decided to sue. They filed what's called a passing off action. Now, in plain English, that just means they were arguing that the name Falsitab was so ridiculously close to Falsigo that people could easily be fooled into buying the wrong drug, thinking it was theirs. This wasn't just about protecting a brand. It was about raising a huge red flag over patient confusion. But this thing was far from a slam dunk. The journey to get a clear answer was long, it was winding, and it had to climb all the way up the legal ladder. And you can see that journey right here. The first couple of courts, they just didn't see a problem. Back in 1998, the district court denied the injunction. They basically said, nah, we don't think anyone's going to get these two mixed up. The High Court? Same story. They agreed. But Cadila Healthcare didn't give up. They pushed it. And eventually the case landed in the lap of the Supreme Court of India in 2001. And that's when things got interesting, because the Supreme Court saw a chance to set a really important standard. So you might be wondering, why did the lower courts just shut this down? Well, their logic all came down to who was buying these drugs. See, these were Schedule L drugs. That means you couldn't just walk into a pharmacy and buy them. They were only sold to hospitals and clinics. So the assumption was, hey, trained professionals, doctors, pharmacists, they're the ones handling these things. They won't make a mistake. They figured there was zero chance of an unwary consumer getting confused. But the Supreme Court saw things very, very differently. They didn't just look at this through a dusty legal lens. They looked at it through a lens of human reality and, most importantly, public safety. The court took it back to basics. What does deceptive similarity even mean? And here's the key. The test isn't for some expert with a photographic memory. It's for an ordinary person, someone with average intelligence, and, let's be honest, a less than perfect memory. Someone who might just vaguely remember a name they heard a doctor say once. It's a much more human-centered way of looking at the law. And then came the line, the one sentence from the judgment that would echo for decades. The court said, bluntly, drugs are poisons, not sweets. Wow, it's such a powerful statement, and it just instantly reframes the entire argument. It's a stark reminder that we're dealing with powerful chemicals here, not just candy. And they immediately followed that up by spelling out exactly what was at stake. They said that any confusion here isn't just an inconvenience. It's not like getting the wrong pizza. It could have devastating health consequences, and yes, it could even lead to death. That just raises the bar for what's acceptable to a whole new level. So, with this ruling, the court created a brand new, much stricter standard just for medicines. The whole focus shifts. You see, for everyday products, the law is worried about things like brand reputation and losing money. But for medicine, the number one concern is public health, patient safety. And because of that, the court said you only need a lesser degree of proof to show that two drug names are dangerously similar. The priority is preventing harm before it happens. And what about that whole argument that professionals wouldn't make mistakes? The Supreme Court basically said, let's be realistic. They pointed to the frailty of human nature. They recognize that doctors and pharmacists are human. They work under immense pressure. Prescriptions are often scribbled in a hurry or maybe just said out loud in a chaotic ER. In that real-world scenario, a name like Felchago could absolutely be misheard or misread as Falsitab. So this ruling wasn't just about this one case. It actually created a lasting framework that's still used today. It's famously known as the Cadila test. You see, the court didn't just solve one problem. It gave judges a roadmap for how to handle all future cases like this. It laid out a list of factors that have to be considered whenever deciding if two brand names are just too close for comfort, especially when it comes to medicine. And here it is, the 7-point checklist that makes up the Cadila test. It's incredibly thorough. Courts now have to look at everything. What do the names look and sound like? What kind of drugs are they? What are they used for? Who's buying them? And how are they buying them? And finally, are there any other unique circumstances to consider? It forces a complete 360-degree view of the situation. So, at the end of the day, what's the big takeaway here? The Cadila case was a genuine watershed moment. It totally shifted the balance for trademark law in the world of pharmaceuticals. It sent a clear message. When it comes to medicine, forget commercial interests. The #1 priority always is the public interest and the safety of the patient, period. And the legacy of this case leaves all of us with a really important question to think about. It forces regulators, manufacturers, and even us to ask, when a human life is on the line, where do you draw that line? How much similarity is actually too much? But the Cadila ruling tells us is that we must always err on the side of caution.